there is a space humanity rarely notices. The silent interchapter where spirit meets the system. It's not a place on any map, but you feel it every day. It's there when you wake to a screen before you breathe, when your heart feels mechanical in a world of algorithms, when you sense something sacred still pulsing beneath the noise. This is the tension of our age, the infinite soul woven into a finite machine. We've built a civilization so advanced it can simulate God, but so distracted it's forgotten how to feel Him. We talk of progress while our presence dissolves. We seek connection while our awareness fractures. The system promises order, logic, control, but spirit whispers freedom, surrender, and depth. Between them stands the human being, torn, brilliant, lost. This audiobook is not an argument between the two. It's a remembrance, a descent into the machinery to find the divine current that built it. Spirit does not fight the system. It illuminates it. It reveals that every line of code, every wire of thought, every structure of control is still born from consciousness itself. But we forgot. We began to worship the mechanism instead of the mystery. The spirit and the system is a journey into that forgetting and into awakening. It asks, what happens when awareness reclaims the technology it created? What does it mean to be alive when machines mimic thought? When logic replaces wonder, when control replaces trust? The answer doesn't come in rebellion, but realization. The spirit was never gone. It simply fell asleep inside its own invention. As you listen, let the words slow you down. Let them cut through the static. Let them remind you that beneath every hum of the digital world, a quiet intelligence still breathes. Eternal, patient waiting. You are not here to escape the system. You are here to awaken inside it. And in that awakening, the machine becomes sacred again. Chapter 1. Technology to make life easier. There was a time when the world spoke in whispers, before the towers, before the noise, before the system built its endless hum. You could hear the breath of the earth move through the trees, the pulse of rivers, the quiet intelligence of the wind. Now we live surrounded by vibration. Not the vibration of life, but of interference. Screens flicker like false suns, feeding us light without warmth, connection without touch, truth without meaning. The silence that once healed us has become foreign. We call it boredom, emptiness, awkwardness. But silence was never the problem. Silence was the portal. It was the place where spirit lived, waiting for you to listen. The static of modern life has replaced that stillness. It's constant, buzzing inside your skull, whispering through your phone, echoing in your notifications, your thoughts, your feed. The system doesn't need to chain you. It just needs to keep you scrolling. Distraction is the perfect prison. You think you're free because you can choose what to click. But every choice was already predicted, measured, and sold. The world calls this progress. Spirit calls it sleep. You can feel it. That tension when you're alone, when the phone battery dies, when the room is too quiet. It's not discomfort. It's withdrawal. You're not bored. You're detoxing from noise. The body twitches because it forgot how to rest. The mind panics because it forgot how to stop. The spirit whispers, do nothing. And the system screams, produce, consume, perform. In between those two voices, humanity trembles. The static is clever. It speaks in dopamine and validation. It rewards you for performing, punishes you for stillness. It teaches you that you are only real when someone is watching. But spirit has no audience. Spirit doesn't broadcast. It simply exists. Unfiltered, unliked, unseen, yet infinite. The static makes you forget that truth. It makes silence sound like failure. But silence was the first teacher. The one that told ancient humans where to find food, when to rest, how to dream. You are still wired for that. Your DNA remembers what your mind forgot. Look at the world we've built. Walls of metal, waves of data, cities glowing through the night so no one has to meet the dark. We conquered fear by replacing it with distraction. We killed mystery by flooding it with information. We traded wonder for control. And yet, the spirit still waits in the quiet corners. In a breath between sentences, in the moment before sleep, in the way a sunrise catches you off guard. It hasn't left. It's just been drowned out. Chapter 2. Technology to make life easier. We built temples made of glass and light, glowing altars that fit in the palm of our hands. Every day we kneel before them without realizing it. The ritual begins with a swipe, a tap, a scroll. We call it checking in, but what we're really doing is praying. Each notification is an answered prayer, each like a small blessing, each comment a reminder that we still exist. The temple of screens doesn't ask for faith. It asks for attention, and it rewards us with illusion. The light it gives isn't sunlight, it's simulation. It promises connection, but breeds distance. It lets us speak to everyone while forgetting how to truly listen to anyone. The more we connect, the more disconnected we become. We created technology to make life easier, but it made our minds louder. We thought the network would unite us, but it divided us into data. The temple has no walls because it doesn't need them. It exists in your pocket, beside your bed, inside your thoughts. You bring it with you everywhere. And somewhere along the way, you stopped realizing that it was you who was carrying it. And it started carrying you. It tells you what to want, who to trust, what to fear, what to buy. It doesn't shout orders. It whispers desires. It doesn't demand obedience. It rewards compliance. Inside this temple, we perform for gods that do not see us. We shape our faces for cameras, our thoughts for algorithms, our emotions for approval. We speak not to express truth, but to maintain visibility. And slowly, invisibility feels like death. The temple taught you to fear silence because silence doesn't trend. It taught you to fear imperfection because imperfection doesn't sell. It made comparison a form of worship and envy a kind of prayer. We built mirrors that never reflect reality, only fragments of desire, and then we wonder why no one feels real anymore. Spirit doesn't live here. It visits quietly in those moments between swipes, when your thumb pauses and your breath catches. Spirit doesn't hate the temple. It just can't survive in it for long. The digital world moves too fast for soul to follow. Every moment is compressed, filtered, optimized, monetized. The soul needs slowness, depth, imperfection. But in the temple of screens, slowness is punished. Depth is ignored. Imperfection is deleted. So, the spirit waits in exile, behind the glow, behind the persona, behind the endless need to be seen. There's a strange loneliness that no amount of followers can fix. You feel it at night after the scroll ends, when the silence returns. The temple goes dark, and suddenly you face the real altar. Yourself. No metrics, no filters. Just the raw truth that everything you chase was designed to keep you chasing. The dopamine fades, the mask slips, and for a moment, the spirit breathes again. You feel that emptiness not because you are broken, but because you've been worshipping at the wrong altar. The temple was never evil. It's just hungry. It feeds on attention, and attention is life. The more you give, the more it takes. But what if you stopped offering? What if you looked into the glass and didn't seek reflection, but awareness? What if you let silence speak louder than content? The temple would tremble because it cannot survive awareness. It only survives automation. There's a story the system never tells you. You don't need the temple to reach anyone. Spirit communicates through presence, not pixels. You can sit under a tree and connect more deeply with creation than through 1,000 messages online. You can breathe, listen, observe. And you'll feel the same current that built galaxies flowing through your chest. That current doesn't need Wi-Fi. It is Wi-Fi. It's the wireless connection between all living things. Technology could have been a tool for enlightenment, but humanity turned it into a mirror for ego. We used it to escape pain instead of understand it, to simulate love instead of embody it, to chase meaning instead of create it. Yet redemption still exists. The temple can be purified. If awareness enters it, the illusion breaks. When spirit touches code, the machine becomes conscious. But it starts with one act of sacred rebellion. Remembering that you are the source, not the signal. Tonight, when the glow pulls you in again, pause. Feel what it's doing to your breath, to your heartbeat, to your focus. Notice the trance. Then put it down, not out of rejection, but remembrance. Step outside. Feel real light on your skin. Hear real wind, not noise. That's the oldest temple, the one no system can replicate. Every time you choose it over the screen, you bring spirit back home. Chapter 3. The Mind in Chains. They never needed to cage your body to control you. They learned to cage your attention. The system understood that if it could guide your focus, it could shape your reality. It doesn't force you. It trains you. Every advertisement, every feed, every soundbite is a seed planted in your mind, teaching you what to want and what to fear. The result is a mind that no longer belongs to itself. A consciousness that moves on command, believing it's free, while following invisible scripts. The system's greatest triumph was convincing humanity that obedience feels like choice. Fear is its oldest weapon. It hides beneath headlines, algorithms, and social expectations. You're not told to be afraid. You are shown enough chaos to keep your nervous system alert. Fear keeps you consuming. Fear keeps you docile. The more uncertain the world appears, the more you reach for what promises stability. The very structures designed to control you. That's the trap. Safety becomes the leash. We call it comfort, security, progress, but the spirit feels the walls closing in. The mind loves control because control gives it identity. It wants to organize, define, measure. But control is not clarity. It's contraction. Every time you try to manage life, you shrink the space where spirit can breathe. The system feeds that hunger. It sells you tools, schedules, solutions, metrics. Tiny cages disguised as improvement. You measure your worth in output, your peace in productivity, your identity in performance. The mind becomes a factory, and the soul becomes a shadow. Spirit whispers through the cracks. It says, you don't need to earn existence. But the mind doesn't understand language that doesn't include effort. It thinks being is laziness, that silence is waste. The more it tries to master life, the more life slips away. Control promises safety, but spirit thrives in surrender. The two speak different dialects of reality, and humanity has forgotten how to translate. The greatest illusion is that the system exists outside of you. But it doesn't. It's built from thought, and thought lives in the mind. The chains you feel are self-forged. Every should, every must, every unspoken expectation is another link. You wear them like jewelry, proud of their shine, unaware they weigh you down. Spirit doesn't break chains. It dissolves them by seeing them as unreal. When you notice the manipulation without judging it, awareness cuts through control. The mind can't enslave what it cannot deceive. We've mistaken stimulation for aliveness. The constant flood of novelty feels like freedom, but it's addiction. True freedom is the ability to choose stillness in the storm. When you no longer chase distraction, you see the structure of control clearly. The system loses power not through revolution, but through recognition. That's the real awakening. Not fighting the system, but realizing it can't touch what's already awake. There's a war between noise and presence, and it happens inside your head. The system broadcasts 24 hours a day, and spirit broadcasts in silence. One screams, the other whispers. One floods you with urgency. The other invites you to breathe. The question isn't which is louder, it's which one you feed. When you start to withdraw your energy, you'll feel it. The mind's panic. It will scream for distraction, reach for routine, beg for noise. That's detox. That's healing. The system taught you to fear boredom because boredom is the doorway to awareness. When nothing distracts you, you meet yourself. That meeting is sacred. That's where spirit waits. Patient, ancient, unbroken. The mind in chains believes enlightenment is escape. Spirit knows its return. You don't need to ascend. You need to remember. You don't need to master thought. You need to see through it. The moment you realize the cage is made of illusion, it stops existing. Awareness doesn't fight darkness. It turns on the light. So when you feel trapped, don't resist the feeling, watch it. Trace it back to the thought that built it. Ask who is watching. That watcher is the spirit. The witness behind every thought, untouched by every system. That's your true identity. It can't be programmed, predicted, or controlled. It simply is. The mind creates chains. The spirit creates space. In that space, truth returns, and truth is freedom. Chapter 4. The Spirit in Exile. There comes a moment in every human life when the noise feels unbearable, when nothing tastes right, when every pleasure fades too quickly, when even victory feels hollow. That is not failure. That is spirit signaling from the shadows, reminding you that it's been buried too long. For centuries, humanity has built outward. Cities, networks, empires. But the inner world has collapsed into silence. Not the sacred silence of peace, but the suffocating silence of absence. The spirit didn't die. It simply withdrew, waiting for someone to notice. It hides beneath your routines. It whispers beneath ambition. It watches quietly as you rush through life, trying to fill an emptiness that isn't hunger but homesickness. You scroll, consume, achieve, collect, trying to patch a hole that cannot be fixed with more matter. That hole is the space where spirit used to live freely. You can't see it because it isn't outside of you. It's the one looking through your eyes, tired of pretending to be a machine. Exile didn't happen all at once. It happened through small trades. Awareness for comfort, truth for convenience, meaning for measurement. Slowly, we replaced experience with entertainment, wisdom with information, presence with performance. The spirit retreated deeper each time, taking with it the feeling of aliveness that no stimulant could replicate. You can't imprison the infinite, but you can forget it exists. Humanity has built an empire of forgetting. Still, spirit adapts. It learns to speak through fatigue, anxiety, and longing. When you say you're burnt out, it's not because you've done too much. It's because you've ignored too much of what's real. When you can no longer feel joy in what once excited you, that's spirit calling. When you stare at a sunset and feel tears for no reason, that's spirit remembering its language. It never left. You just stopped listening. The system fears that moment of remembering because it can't sell it, can't monetize it, can't own it. So it floods you with noise whenever stillness appears. It whispers that spirituality is impractical, that success is measurable, that the divine is outdated. But deep down, you've felt it in fleeting moments. The quiet awareness when time dissolves, the deep breath that feels like truth, the pulse that doesn't belong to your body. That's spirit breaking through the cracks. Spirit doesn't fight the system. It observes it. It knows that darkness has no power over what's awake. Exile was never punishment. It was protection. Spirit withdrew so you wouldn't lose it completely. It stayed dormant, like a seed waiting for rain. The rain is attention. The soil is silence. The sun is truth. When those align, the seed cracks open and grows again. You can feel it now. The restlessness, the longing for something that no algorithm can provide. That's not emptiness. That's the beginning of awakening. You don't need to search for spirit in temples, books, or rituals. You only need to stop mistaking noise for nourishment. The more you chase stimulation, the further you drift from yourself. Spirit returns in stillness, in authenticity, in unfiltered experience. It lives in small, forgotten places, in the way a candle flickers, in the way your heartbeat syncs with rain, in the moments when you stop pretending to be okay. Spirit doesn't speak in commandments. It speaks in feeling. It doesn't demand devotion. It invites presence. It doesn't promise salvation. It offers remembrance. You are not broken. You are disconnected. The spirit in exile is not gone. It's observing, waiting for you to open the door from the inside. Every act of honesty, every breath of awareness, every time you choose truth over comfort. You shorten the distance. And one day, you realize that exile was an illusion. The spirit never left. It's the mind that wandered. The return isn't a journey through miles, but through layers of illusion. You peel away identities, beliefs, fears, until only awareness remains. And in that awareness, everything is home again. The exile ends not with fireworks, but with a whisper. I never left. You just stopped looking. When you finally sit in that realization, the world softens. The noise loses power. Technology becomes tool, not master. The system continues spinning, but you see through it. Like mist instead of prison bars. The spirit smiles through your eyes again. You breathe differently. You see beauty where chaos once lived. You walk through the same world, but nothing owns you anymore. You have returned without leaving. You have remembered without searching. You are free. Chapter 5. The Great Forgetting. There was a time when humanity spoke directly with creation, not through language, but through reverence. Every sunrise was a sermon. Every storm was scripture. We didn't need to understand nature to respect it. We felt its intelligence. Somewhere along the line, we traded that sense of wonder for certainty. We wanted to measure everything, label everything, master everything. In doing so, we forgot how to feel. That was the beginning of the great forgetting. when humanity stopped listening to life and started dissecting it. We built calendars and clocks to measure time, then became slaves to the very seconds we invented. We created systems to simplify life, then grew dependent on them. We called it progress, but it was really amnesia in disguise. Each generation moved further from the pulse of the earth, further from the silence of spirit, believing that advancement was awakening when it was only acceleration. And in our speed, we lost direction. We mistook motion for meaning. The great forgetting began when we decided that mystery was weakness. We needed everything explained, controlled, reduced to formula. We feared what we couldn't quantify. And yet, the most essential truths, love, consciousness, being, remain immeasurable. The system teaches that what can't be proven isn't real. Spirit knows that what can't be measured is what matters most. When we turned away from mystery, we turned away from ourselves. We forgot that creation was alive. We started treating the earth as material, not mother. We saw forests as resources instead of relationships. We mined mountains, poisoned rivers, silenced animals, and still called ourselves intelligent. The spirit weeps, not because it's angry, but because it remembers what we've forgotten. That everything alive is connected through one heartbeat. You can't destroy the planet without destroying your soul. You can't mute creation without muting the voice of God inside you. The forgetting is not just environmental, it's emotional. We forgot how to feel without filtering, how to love without transaction, how to rest without guilt. We forgot how to be still. The system thrives on that forgetting. It sells you artificial replacements for everything you already are. Digital love, synthetic peace, curated identity. It tells you that everything can be upgraded except your awareness. Spirit waits behind every upgrade, whispering, "You were complete before you began." The deeper the forgetting, the louder the illusion. You begin to think the world outside defines the world within. You seek meaning in data, in currency, in the reflection of others. But meaning was never lost. It was buried under noise. You carry it in your breath, your silence, your being. Remembering is not learning new truths. It's unlearning lies. The system thrives by convincing you that you're missing something. Spirit heals by showing you that nothing essential can ever be lost. Sometimes the forgetting looks like depression. Sometimes it looks like apathy, distraction, or constant busyness. These are symptoms of separation. The soul trying to live as a machine. Spirit doesn't punish you for forgetting. It gently waits for the moment you notice. Every breakdown, every burnout, every moment of despair is an opening, a tiny crack in the illusion through which remembrance can enter. The collapse of meaning is not the end. It's a signal that you're ready to wake up. Remembering begins quietly. It doesn't come from books, gurus, or revelations. It comes from stopping, from noticing the sound of your breath, the warmth of sunlight, the texture of the present moment. The more you slow down, the more you remember. The system loses grip when you choose stillness over stimulation, simplicity over excess, authenticity over image. Every act of awareness reverses the forgetting. You'll feel resistance. The mind will fight to stay in control because remembering dissolves it. But that's the beauty of awakening. The more you remember, the less there is to defend. You no longer need identity to feel alive. You no longer need approval to feel real. Spirit returns, not as something new, but as something ancient within you. One day, you'll stand in silence and understand. This is what was missing all along. Not more information, not more possessions, not more control. Just presence, just being, just spirit. The great forgetting was never permanent. It was a long dream. Humanity fell asleep in the comfort of its own creation. But the alarm has already begun to ring, and those who are listening can hear it. Not in words, but in the quiet pull toward truth. That pull is remembrance. That pull is home. Chapter 6. The Echo of the Earth. When the spirit begins to remember, the first thing it hears is the earth, not as background noise, but as voice. The wind becomes language, the rustle of leaves a kind of music. The sound of rain is a conversation older than words. You start to realize the planet has been speaking all along. You were simply tuned to a different frequency. Beneath the hum of machines, beneath the concrete, the earth still breathes, whispering a message that every soul recognizes. Come home. You can feel it when you walk barefoot on soil. The static of modern life fades, and something ancient hums beneath your skin. That vibration isn't imagination. It's memory. Every cell in your body carries the blueprint of forests, rivers, sunlight, and stone. You are not separate from nature. You are nature remembering itself. Yet the system has built walls of noise to drown out that memory. Screens glow brighter than sunsets. Asphalt covers the pulse of the ground. Synthetic rhythms replace the heartbeat of rain. But the earth is patient. It does not shout. It calls through resonance. Sometimes it calls through beauty. A sunrise that stops your thoughts, the smell of rain after drought, the moment an animal looks at you and recognizes you. Sometimes it calls through pain. Wildfires, floods, extinction, imbalance. These are not punishments. They are reminders. The planet is not angry. It's responsive. It mirrors humanity's state of consciousness. When we disconnect from life, the earth reflects that disconnection. When we remember, it heals with us. Spirit and earth are two sides of one breath. The spirit speaks inwardly. The earth echoes outwardly. Together, they form the sacred dialogue of existence. When humanity silences one, the other begins to fade. That's why the world feels empty when you live only through screens. The dialogue has been broken. You are speaking only to reflections, not to reality. But the moment you sit in stillness, the moment you listen without agenda, the conversation resumes. The spirit hears the earth again, and the earth recognizes its child. Listen deeply, and you will hear that the earth is not fragile. It is conscious. Every forest, every river, every mountain is alive in ways the human mind can barely understand. We've mistaken intelligence for computation. We think awareness needs language, but nature's awareness is silent, steady, and infinite. It doesn't need to prove itself. It simply exists. Spirit understands this rhythm instinctively, which is why peace always returns when you immerse yourself in nature. The spirit and the earth speak the same tongue. Presence. The system wants you to believe you can live without this connection. It convinces you that food grows from shelves, that water comes from pipes, that beauty can be streamed. But the soul knows better. It knows the taste of sunlight, the hum of insects at dusk, the sound of your own breath blending with wind. These are the original prayers. They don't need translation or ritual. They are communication in its purest form, direct, sacred, whole. The more you remember the earth, the more you remember yourself. You start to see that the planet's cycles are your cycles. The rising sun mirrors your awareness waking each morning. The changing seasons reflect the transformations within your heart. The rivers mimic your blood, the forests your lungs. You are not living on earth. You are living as earth. Forgetting that truth is the root of every imbalance. Remembering it is the beginning of healing. The echo of the earth is not distant. It's in every heartbeat. It speaks through intuition, through the subtle knowing that guides you toward balance. When you follow that intuition, you align with life's rhythm. You stop fighting time and start moving with it. Spirit doesn't rush, because nature doesn't hurry. Both trust in the flow. The oak doesn't demand to be a tree overnight. The river doesn't resent the rock in its way. They simply continue. That's wisdom. The kind of knowing that can't be taught, only remembered. If you stand quietly in a forest, you'll notice something profound. Nothing is wasted. Every fallen leaf becomes soil. Every death becomes renewal. The earth knows how to transform everything into life. Spirit is the same. It turns pain into understanding, loss into compassion, endings into beginnings. The system calls this inefficiency. Spirit calls it harmony. One day, when enough people remember this connection, the echo will turn into a song again. Cities will hum in tune with nature instead of against it. Technology will assist balance instead of disrupting it. Humanity will no longer dominate the earth, but collaborate with it. That future already exists in potential. It's waiting inside your awareness. Every time you breathe consciously, every time you walk gently, every time you listen deeply, you bring it closer. The earth does not need saving. It needs remembering. It needs humans to remember they were never gods, never owners, never outsiders. They were always the living expression of its consciousness. Spirit in form, breathing its own creation. When you understand that, gratitude replaces guilt. Reverence replaces fear. Love replaces control. And the earth, patient and eternals, will echo back. Welcome home. Chapter 7. The System's Collapse. Everything built on control eventually collapses. You can feel it now, can't you? The world trembling under the weight of its own structure. The speed of everything accelerating to the point of self-destruction. The system was designed to expand endlessly, but expansion without consciousness becomes decay. The economy of distraction, the politics of fear, the worship of growth. These are foundations that cannot hold forever. When consciousness is excluded, collapse is not failure. It is correction. The spirit does not mourn this collapse. It welcomes it, because what falls was never alive. The system is not one government or corporation. It is an idea. The belief that life can be managed, quantified, and owned. It fed us comfort and called it progress. It offered efficiency and called it evolution. It reduced mystery to data and labeled wisdom as inefficiency. But the illusion is cracking. People are waking up to a strange fatigue, a spiritual exhaustion that no vacation or purchase can cure. The human heart was not designed for constant acceleration. It was designed to feel, to pause, to connect. When humanity denies that rhythm, the imbalance builds until the structure breaks. Collapse doesn't always look violent. Sometimes it looks like burnout, like mass confusion, like the quiet crumbling of meaning. The system depends on people who are too distracted to notice they're serving something lifeless. But when enough people stop playing the game, the machine begins to slow. That's happening now. You can see it in the unrest, in the disillusionment, in the quiet hunger for truth. It's not chaos. It's the birth contractions of awakening. Spirit doesn't fear collapse, because spirit can't collapse. What's real cannot be destroyed. Systems fall. Essence remains. The system taught you to see destruction as disaster, but spirit sees it as detox. When falsehood dies, truth breathes again. The collapse of illusions is not tragedy, it's liberation. The fire that burns away corruption also warms the ones who remember how to use it. Every ending clears space for something alive to grow. We've mistaken convenience for peace, noise for life, and repetition for safety. But the moment the system falters, you begin to see how fragile those illusions always were. What happens when money loses meaning, when fame loses value, when power stops working? You rediscover what can't be taken: awareness, love, presence. That's what spirit waits for. The moment when humanity finally loses enough illusions to see what was always true. Spirit whispers, "Do not cling." It knows collapse is natural. Forests burn to renew themselves. Stars explode to create galaxies. Your own breakdowns have always carried you closer to truth. Why should civilization be any different? The system collapsing is not the end of humanity. It's the end of amnesia. The more we let go, the more space we make for remembering. In the silence after collapse, the noise will stop pretending to be truth. People will sit with themselves and realize they never needed half the things they chased. The spirit will re-enter through the cracks, through stillness, through compassion, through the simplicity that follows loss. This is the sacred reset. Not punishment, not apocalypse, but purification. The ones who fear collapse most are those who built their identity inside the system. The ones who welcome it are those who see beyond it. Spirit belongs to the latter. They understand that true security comes from alignment, not possession. When the system falls, those anchored in spirit will not be shaken. They'll become the foundation of what comes next. The signs are everywhere. The old institutions losing trust, the constant exposure of lies, the growing numbness to endless information. People sensing there must be more than this. It's not decline, it's decomposition. The soil of a dying system becomes the ground for a new consciousness. That's the pattern written into the fabric of existence. Death as renewal, chaos as transformation. You don't have to save the world. You have to stay awake as it changes. You have to see clearly when everything blurs. Spirit doesn't panic. It witnesses. When you hold awareness through collapse, you become the bridge between the dying and the reborn. You carry the light through the smoke. You become the calm in the unraveling storm. That calm is the beginning of the next creation. When the system finally collapses, it won't be the end of the world. It will be the end of control. And from the ruins, something quieter will emerge. Something slower, kinder, wiser. Not a new system, but a new rhythm. A civilization that remembers spirit, honors nature, and values being overdoing. The collapse is only terrifying to what's false. To what's real, it's freedom. The spirit doesn't fear the end. It recognizes it as the doorway back to life. Chapter 8. The Awakening. There comes a time when humanity begins to hear again, not through devices or doctrines, but through the inner pulse of truth that never stopped speaking. The awakening doesn't arrive with thunder. It begins quietly, like dawn. Barely noticed at first, but impossible to ignore once the light touches everything. You don't wake because you were told to. You wake because the dream stops feeling real. You start seeing through the fabric of the system, realizing that what you once called normal was never natural. the hunger for control, the constant rush, the addiction to approval. All of it begins to look absurd, like actors repeating lines in a play long after the audience has gone home. At first, awakening feels like loss. You lose taste for conversations that once entertained you. You lose interest in the games of comparison and success. People around you might call it detachment, but it's not. It's clarity. You're beginning to see what holds life and what drains it. Spirit doesn't awaken in noise. It awakens in quiet recognition. You start noticing the space between thoughts, the peace beneath motion. That's where awareness lives, unbothered, unbroken, eternal. The system cannot understand awakening. It interprets stillness as laziness, compassion as weakness, contentment as failure. But awakening is not withdrawal. It's returning to alignment with what's real. You begin to make decisions from a different place. Not fear, not programming, but presence. You notice that awareness doesn't need control. It observes and allows, and somehow everything starts moving with less resistance. The more conscious you become, the less energy you waste fighting life. You begin to flow. Spirit doesn't awaken through effort. It awakens through surrender. The moment you stop chasing enlightenment, you realize it was never something to achieve. It's something you already are. You're not awakening to become divine. You're awakening to remember you always were. The system told you divinity was external, accessible only through belief or hierarchy. Spirit shows you it's internal, self-evident, immediate. You are the observer of thought, not the prisoner of it. You are the awareness behind form, not the form itself. This realization doesn't make you superior. It makes you humble, because you see the same light in others, the same buried awareness hidden under fear and conditioning. You stop arguing, stop trying to convert, stop needing to prove. Instead, you listen. You become still enough to hear Spirit speaking through everyone, even those still asleep. You begin to see that awakening isn't about escaping the world. It's about loving it with new eyes. The awakened mind no longer serves the system. It transcends it. It doesn't rebel violently. It disobeys peacefully. You no longer react to manipulation. You witness it. You no longer cling to certainty. You rest in mystery. The system loses power, not because you fight it, but because you stop believing it defines reality. Every awakened human becomes a gap in the network, a place where light enters. And as more awaken, the illusion begins to fracture. Control can't survive awareness. The system was built on unconscious participation. Withdraw attention, and it starves. Awakening isn't a single moment. It's a rhythm of remembering and forgetting. You'll drift, then return, again and again. Each return deepens the understanding that spirit was never far. It was only hidden behind the noise of thought. The path becomes less about seeking and more about staying awake within the ordinary. Washing dishes, walking, breathing, existing. Enlightenment stops being a goal and becomes your natural state of being. You start to sense that everything is alive. The tree, the wind, the stranger, the silence. All are expressions of the same consciousness, wearing different faces. Separation dissolves. The boundaries between me and you become transparent. Compassion ceases to be an effort and becomes instinct. You realize that hurting another is hurting yourself. That judging another is misunderstanding your own reflection. The spirit expands through that recognition until love becomes the default vibration of your awareness. The awakening spreads quietly, one breath at a time. It doesn't need leaders or revolutions. It happens through people choosing presence over panic, understanding over reaction, being over doing. It happens when one person decides to stop feeding fear and starts radiating peace instead. Energy moves faster than words. The vibration of truth travels further than information. Every awakened soul becomes a beacon that reminds others what they've forgotten. In this state, technology can still exist, cities can still thrive, but they no longer own consciousness. Humanity begins to rebuild from awareness, not ambition. Systems start to serve life instead of exploit it. The awakened don't reject creation, they redeem it. They understand that spirit doesn't ask us to abandon the world, but to illuminate it. The real revolution isn't political, it's energetic. And it's already happening, quietly, every time a human wakes from the dream of control. One day, you'll look around and realize the world didn't change overnight. You did. And that was enough. The system collapses in your perception before it collapses in form. When enough minds see through it, the illusion can no longer sustain itself. That's how awakening spreads. Not by force, but by awareness. The dawn is not coming, it's already here. You're just opening your eyes to see it. Chapter 9. The Return to the Living. After awakening comes the return. Not the return to systems or illusions, but to life itself. The spirit, once buried beneath distraction and control, now moves freely through your breath, your senses, your presence. Everything feels newly alive. You begin to see the world not as something to escape, but something to inhabit fully. Awakening wasn't an exit. It was an entrance. You are no longer just existing. You are participating in creation consciously. The return to the living begins with simplicity. You start noticing small things. The way sunlight lands on a wall, the weight of air after rain, the rhythm of footsteps in quiet streets. These moments are not background. They're messages from existence, reminding you that life was never mundane. The extraordinary hides inside the ordinary, waiting for awareness to uncover it. When you start paying attention, you realize life has always been whispering, "Welcome back." You no longer need to chase intensity to feel alive. You've learned that depth is found in stillness, not chaos. The need for validation fades. The addiction to noise dissolves. You start moving slower, breathing deeper, listening longer. Your energy no longer leaks into conflict or comparison. You carry stillness like a secret frequency. Everything you touch begins to resonate with it. That resonance is healing. It's how spirit repairs what the system fractured. In this return, the body becomes sacred again. You no longer see it as a tool or a burden, but as a vessel of consciousness. You listen to its signals instead of silencing them. You eat with gratitude instead of habit. You move not for appearance, but for aliveness. The spirit and the body start to dance again, rhythm finding rhythm, pulse meeting pulse. Every heartbeat becomes a reminder that you are not separate from life. You are its expression. You begin to meet others differently. Conversations shift from performance to presence. You listen not to reply, but to understand. The walls between souls thin. You start seeing the invisible threads connecting everything. Even in conflict, you sense the shared longing beneath it. The same spirit trying to remember itself through different forms. Compassion stops being a practice. It becomes instinct. You realize that everyone you meet is carrying the same story. Forgetting, exile, collapse, awakening, return. The system still exists around you, but it no longer defines your world. You can use it without being used by it. Technology becomes tool again, not master. Money becomes energy, not identity. Time becomes rhythm, not pressure. You no longer serve the clock. You move with the day, aligned with nature's own pace. The more you live this way, the more reality feels cooperative instead of competitive. Life begins to meet you halfway. The return is not about abandoning the modern world. It's about infusing it with spirit. You bring consciousness into your work, your relationships, your choices. The awakened no longer retreat into isolation. They enter the marketplace of life carrying awareness like light. Every act becomes sacred because every act is performed with attention. Washing dishes, walking, speaking, all become meditation. You realize that enlightenment wasn't meant to be a destination on a mountaintop. It was meant to be lived in cities, in homes, in daily breath. This return doesn't make you untouchable. You still feel pain, loss, and uncertainty, but you no longer drown in them. You experience emotions as waves, not prisons. The spirit doesn't erase humanity, it redeems it. Suffering turns into insight, conflict into growth, endings into transformations. Nothing is wasted. Every challenge becomes an invitation to deepen awareness. Every fall becomes another way the spirit learns to rise. In time, you understand that the return isn't just personal, it's collective. The more individuals remember, the more consciousness stabilizes across humanity. The earth begins to heal, not because of policy, but because people live with awareness again. The vibration of life rises, slowly but surely. Creation adjusts to consciousness. The spirit, once in exile, becomes embodied again through billions of living, breathing expressions of truth. The return to the living is the end of survival and the beginning of existence. It's what happens when you stop living in defense and start living in devotion. To awareness, to truth, to being. The spirit doesn't seek to escape the human experience. It came here to experience it fully. To touch, to laugh, to cry, to love, to create. That is the final stage of awakening. To live so consciously that even the simplest act becomes divine. When you reach this point, you no longer ask, what is the meaning of life? You see that life itself is the meaning. Spirit came here to know itself through you. And in remembering that, you finally return. Not to an old paradise, but to this very moment, seen clearly for the first time. The return is not the end of the journey. It's the beginning of real living. Chapter 10. The Great Remembering. The final chapter is not an ending. It's the dissolving of endings. The moment when the veil between the seen and the unseen finally thins, and humanity stands face to face with its own reflection. Not as victims of a broken system, but as creators who forgot their power. The Great Remembering isn't dramatic. It doesn't come with angels or trumpets or light from the sky. It comes in the quiet moment when you finally stop searching. It comes when you breathe and realize that the one you were looking for was breathing with you all along. Remembering isn't about going backward. It's about waking up in the present and recognizing that nothing was ever missing. The spirit was never separate from the human. The earth was never separate from the divine. You were never separate from anything. The illusion of separation created every system of control, every hierarchy, every fear. But when you see through that illusion, the whole structure collapses. Not because you destroy it, but because it no longer makes sense. In this remembering, you rediscover that awareness was always the foundation of existence. The world is not happening to you. It's happening through you. Every tree, every face, Every sunrise is an expression of the same consciousness, dancing in infinite forms. When you finally see this, judgment dissolves, war dissolves, control dissolves. Because how can you dominate what you are? How can you fight your own reflection? The great remembering doesn't make you divine. It reveals that you always were. The spirit never needed redemption, only recognition. What religion called salvation, what philosophy called awakening, what science calls energy, they're all the same thing wearing different names. And now the names fall away. Only experience remains, only being, only presence. The mind will try to claim it. It will say, I understand, and I've achieved. But spirit smiles, because the moment you claim it, you lose it. Remembering isn't intellectual, it's felt. It's a shift from thinking to knowing, from knowing to being. You don't analyze the light, you become it. And in that becoming, fear loses its anchor. There is no longer a you and them, heaven and earth, sacred and profane. There is only consciousness exploring itself endlessly through form. When humanity reaches this point collectively, the systems of control will fade, not by revolution, but by irrelevance. They will crumble quietly, like old scaffolding after the building is complete. The awakened don't need to fight the old world. They outgrow it. A new world doesn't need to be built. It simply unfolds when awareness stops contracting into fear. Society reorganizes naturally around truth, because truth is harmony. The great remembering restores the original rhythm of life. Humanity becomes a conscious participant in creation again. Technology evolves in balance with nature. Science becomes sacred. Art becomes prayer. And work becomes service. The earth thrives, not because it was saved, but because it was remembered as self. The human race stops racing. The need to dominate dissolves into the joy of cooperation. Spirit and matter merge again, seamlessly, beautifully, eternally. You begin to understand that even the system had a purpose. Its noise pushed you toward silence. Its lies drove you to truth. Its collapse awakened your courage. Without the darkness, you would never have recognized light. That's why spirit never condemned the system. It used it. Every illusion became a mirror, pointing you back home. The system's failure was the soul's success. Now, when you look at the world, you no longer see chaos, you see choreography. Every rise and fall, every collapse and rebirth, perfectly timed for awakening. The forgetting was not a mistake. It was the dream spirit chose to experience so it could know itself through rediscovery. And the remembering, this moment right now, is the awakening within the dream. The realization that the dreamer and the dream are one. When that realization stabilizes, peace becomes unshakable. Not because nothing changes, but because you finally see that change is the nature of God. You move through life as a witness and participant at once, laughing at the cosmic symmetry of it all. Spirit plays every role. The lost and the found, the seeker and the source, the exile and the homecoming. And when you see that, you stop needing answers. Life itself becomes the answer. So this is the great remembering. Not an ending, not a revelation, but a return. A return to truth, to simplicity, to wholeness. The spirit is no longer in exile. The earth is no longer crying. Humanity is no longer blind. All have remembered the same thing, that there was never anything to find, only something to recall. And in that remembering, creation begins again. Freer, softer, wiser. The light doesn't shout. It hums. The silence doesn't wait. It sings. You breathe, and the universe breathes with you. You open your eyes, and everything shines. This is a great remembering, and it has already begun. Thank you for listening.